Hello, this is episode 40.
Wow.
What a round number. Today, we're talking about the fact that we've been to some theme parks.
Crazy.
I know. It's weird to say that.
Who would have thought on a theme park based podcast, the people who host it have been to theme parks?
In these crazy times, mate.
That's mental.
That is what we're dealing with. But yeah, we went to 2 parks last week. For the first time in like ages since Blackpool opening, right?
Yeah, so first time since mid-February.
Yeah.
And we went mid-July. So what's that? 6 months?
Half a year.
March, April, May, June, July. 5 months.
5 months.
Can't
Nearly
count.
half a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically we went to 2 parks. We want to talk about how COVID has affected theme parks and what it means. So like all the measures they had in place and everything, you know, like how the experience was basically post lockdown.
Yep.
So how was it for you, Harry?
Generally, it was weird, right? Because I feel like the parks had the same vibe.
As before?
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to Paultons Park in Alton Towers,
Yeah.
right? And we hadn't been to Paultons Park before, but I can imagine that it doesn't feel very different to what we felt it as.
Yeah, well, before we get into it, basically there was a few differences between Paultons and Towers. Like Paultons they didn't have any requirements on masks, so I think that played a big role in what you're saying. So like Paultons felt very like nothing was going on except for some hand sanitizer.
But the vibe of Towers didn't feel different.
No.
There wasn't
But
one
what I
point
mean is,
where
I
I
think-
felt like, oh, this is strange, you know. In that sense, it didn't ever feel like it was like much had happened, even though a lot had happened.
I think it felt less strange than I thought it was going to feel.
Yeah, for sure.
But there were still elements of like, this is a bit weird.
I honestly didn't really get that.
I don't know how anxious you were like being there, but I was very anxious before and during and after, basically, about the whole thing. Because like when the parks opened, we didn't want to go straight away. Like it was a big thing. We didn't really know when to go or which parks to go to.
Yeah.
It was like a really hard decision to make because obviously you have to, like at some point we're going to have to go back to normal, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to start going to parks again and going to restaurants and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, when does that start?
Yeah.
Should it be immediately from when everything opens? Or like, should we wait? I don't know.
But I guess that's your choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reader discretion.
But we slightly disagreed on our own personal choice. Do you know what I mean? I think I would have waited longer than you
Yes.
to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. It was just a bit weird generally because we chose to wear our masks the whole time, even though you didn't have to. You only had to wear them at Towers on the rides.
Mm-hmm.
So
On
Paultons,
certain rides.
yeah, on the coasters kind of ones.
Thrill rides, yeah.
So Paultons didn't even have like any requirements on masks. Probably, well, we reckon it's because kids under 6 or something don't have to wear masks, and everybody going to Paultons basically has a child under 6 except for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we think that's why, but then it doesn't really make sense to me because there are still a ton of adults in the park walking around, like going on the ride still. So I don't know, I felt like they could have had some kind of mask situation going on at Paultons like they do at Towers. But having said that, Paultons had, I feel like, a lot more hand sanitizer thingies, and they had set up some outdoor sinks with like dryers so you could wash your hands. So I feel like they were more doing the whole, if everybody just keeps washing their hands, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Which Towers, they didn't have any outdoor sinks, but...
I think a difference, obviously Towers is so much bigger than Paultons.
Yeah.
So Paultons, you could be walking between, you know, the rides and there'd be a hand sanitizer station.
Yeah.
But it maybe felt like there were more because it was smaller, if that makes sense.
Maybe, yeah.
Because, you know,
Because there's less area to, yeah.
You walk ages, don't you, at Towers? So
Yeah.
you'd not see one in ages because, you know, but they had them at the rides.
Although, with the hand sanitizers, I thought they would have them, like, literally either on the station or, like, just before you exit the end of the queue line, like, to get on the ride. I thought they were going to have one there, which on some of the Towers rides they did, like Wicker Man had one right there. I can't remember which other ones, but some of them did, like just before you got on. And then I thought they'd have
Spinball
one
had
on
one.
I thought they'd have one on the exit as well. but some of them didn't have. Do you know what I mean? I thought it'd be like literally every ride has one on before you go on and after you get off. So that way, people aren't taking the virus onto the ride and they're not bringing it off the ride.
I mean, maybe they did, but we just didn't see them.
I was looking though, because I was looking, and then if they didn't have one, I got mine out because I wanted to hand sanitize my hands. So maybe it was like hidden or something, but I don't know. It depends how like anal everybody wants to get, I guess.
Yeah, definitely not everyone was using it, obviously.
Definitely, for sure. Like this was the problem really. It's like generally we were impressed with how the parks dealt with everything. Like obviously they shut the rides every half an hour to clean them. They had hand sanitizer, they had chevrons on the floor for social distancing. There was like changes to the restaurants and how they do the buffets and everything like that. So they thought about everything, but then they have to trust the guests to actually do what they're saying. They can't just literally walk around and force everybody to do it. And
no,
obviously some people aren't going to do it.
No. Talking to restaurants, you know, I was a bit miffed actually.
Bit miffed? Why?
Yeah, my favourite restaurant at Towers is Woodcutters.
Oh yeah, didn't it open like just after we went?
It did. So we went to Pizza and Pasta because I love pizza.
Yeah.
But I always like Woodcutters because it's just nice vibe.
It's real food, don't it?
Real food, tastes good. It's not too expensive when you have a Merlin Pass with a 20% discount. Yeah, and obviously it wasn't open because it's quite tight. Yeah. And it's all like bar, you know, service.
They had the outdoor section for drinks was open.
They did, yes. But now they've moved it to an app. So there's like a QR code on the table. You scan it and then you order on the app and they bring it to you.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I'm really miffed.
Yeah.
that it wasn't open.
Yeah, that would have been better, I think, because basically at Towers, we saw everybody's updates saying that the pizza and pasta buffet had turned to takeaway.
Yeah.
So essentially, for your price of whatever, £12, you'd get one whole pizza to yourself, and it was like fresh cooked.
Yep.
You could choose what you wanted. It was like pepperoni or whatever. Anyway, so we were really pumped about this. We were like, okay, we're going to get one pizza, we're going to share it, and then we can have like a snack later on. We got there. First, we thought it was shut, and I was absolutely fuming because I was like, if this is shut, I'm going to cry. But then it did open, but it was like the buffet was open again. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they really moved the tables at all.
No.
There was no like social distance between the tables. Essentially, they had the buffet with screens, and the staff members were like serving you what you wanted, and then they gave you your plate at the end. But it was like that was all they changed, was the buffet aspect. They didn't move the tables. Like everyone was really close, walking past each other. Like even in the queue for the buffet, no one was socially distancing. So it was all a bit kind of like, and once you're in there, you can't really leave. So I was like, this is a bit, I don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult. I think parks should really try and avoid indoor restaurants as much as possible.
Yeah.
But then,
or limit the capacity so there's less tables and more space.
But then in the UK especially, most of the restaurants are indoors because it rains.
Yeah. Well,
you know, so outdoor seating is always less than indoor, drastically, usually. Mm-hmm. So that kind of ties off quite a few if you ignore that rule. But yeah, you're right. They should have moved the tables, spaced them out more. That would have been good.
But when we were at Paultons, we ate in the, what's it called? Wild Forest or something restaurant. And that was really good because they had I think they had spaced the tables out, or if they hadn't, they were already basically really far away.
You see, I would have thought even those tables should have been further. I thought some of them were quite close still.
I think if it was busier, then yeah.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't that busy, it was okay.
Yeah, because it was people were spacing naturally.
Yeah, but also outdoor seating, everyone was out there as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was a lot of room to move around there, but...
Well, it's just a much bigger restaurant, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was huge.
It's quite nice, yeah.
It was very nice, very reasonably priced for a decent meal.
Yeah, and then, the queue, socially distanced again with markers on the ground.
Yeah, to go to the counter to order.
Yeah.
They could easily do an app situation though. Yeah.
Definitely. I think if parks can transfer things like ordering onto an app, it's just better for everyone, isn't it really? Mm-hmm. Especially with table service. If you've got a table number... Just sit down, order, and it just reduces people moving around.
Yeah. Even the waiters moving around.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. But we didn't eat at any fast food restaurants, did we?
No.
At either park. Mainly because we wanted to treat ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't been to a theme park in ages.
Yeah.
And I hate like just theme park food is very repetitive very quickly.
Yeah.
So if we can avoid it as much as possible, I tend to.
And both times it was like reasonably priced. Obviously, Paultons was like £7-8 for a meal each.
Yeah.
Plus a drink, and then
it's like 18 quid at Paultons and about 20 at Towers.
Yeah, and at Paultons we had like chips and like fajita wrap type things.
Yeah.
It was like really nice.
Yeah.
So like when you compare that, probably a hot dog would be like £4.
No, a hot dog meal is easily going to be 6. I reckon.
That's true. So, but it's basic. What I mean is like you might as well pay like £2 more or whatever. Well,
this is it. This is why I like Woodcutter so much is because I would buy a burger from the Burger Kitchen. It's what their like classic burger place is called, and that would cost £7 for a meal.
Yeah.
For normally, right? Woodcutters cost like 12, but when you put the Merlin discount on, it's like just under 10.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
I'd pay £10 for a nice burger meal normally.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
also you get to sit down in a nice place and like chill out for a bit.
You can have a pint as well then. So, it's just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. They've done a lot of stuff to introduce measures, but I feel like there was a lot they could have done extra.
Well, I think this is the whole kind of they have to ease into it thing.
Yeah.
Because it must be difficult not knowing what to do. Obviously, they have no one in the park. They haven't had anyone in the park for months.
Yeah.
They have to come up with all of these measures with no one in the park. No one to trial it, no one to test it. And that's got to be difficult, right?
And also they're probably assuming that everyone's going to... most people are going to follow the rules that they've set. But then when they see in real life that people are just not following it, it must be really hard. Like, I saw a few tweets of, early on, like, people just completely ignoring stuff. It must be really hard for the staff who have, like, put all these markers out and people just aren't standing on them. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing?
I think things have already been changed.
Yeah, definitely.
So, by the sounds of it, they will continue to review what they've got in place, what works, what doesn't work, and adjust it accordingly. Especially as they start to ramp the numbers up. Yeah, they're going to have to adjust some of these things so that they can accommodate more people.
There's some clever things they did, like how they let people in at Towers. Just as soon as we got there, we went in. It was like 9:15.
Yeah. So for ages. Towers had early ride time, right? That started at 9. Mm-hmm. So anyone could go into the park at 9, right? But not everyone could get early ride time. You had to show your ticket to someone at the entrance of the queue line, who would then go, you're allowed early ride time. Right.
So people could roam, but they couldn't get into the ride.
Yeah. So then what my family would do is we'd go to the coffee place at the bottom of Tower Street. Yeah. Have a coffee. Sometimes, one time there was these bacon baguettes. Oh, nice. Which were good. So we had bacon baguettes while we waited.
And then you walk to the ride you want to go on first.
Yeah, exactly. But then they stopped doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And it turned into a system where, first of all, early ride time was cut to 9:30. Mm-hmm. So half an hour instead of an hour. And then only people who had early ride time could go in early. Mm-hmm. So you could only really get in just before 9:30. Otherwise, you had to wait till... Gates meant to open at 10, but they usually open at like 10 to 10. Mm-hmm. So you weren't ever allowed in, just to roam normally. But then, as you said, to not... kind of, it's to stop the queue backing up, right? Because of these measures take longer to do. They're letting people in straight away so that there isn't a big queue that builds up. Mm-hmm. So people just gradually flow in. Yeah, because you had to go through... Someone was standing kind of like before you get into the plaza bit. To check you have tickets. Yeah, and a mask as well. Yeah. Just letting you know like what are the rules. Yeah. And then once you got through there, they told us which queue to go in, didn't they? So they were like, oh, can you go on number 4? Or 5. Yeah. And so we followed number 4 and it brought us to a tent. And we had a temperature check and a bag check. Yeah. But they just looked in it. Mm-hmm. And then you were through to the gate where you went through the gate. Mm-hmm. So there was like 3 checkpoints, but there was never a queue. You just constantly were moving. Flowing, yeah. Which was really good. I really liked it. Yeah, because being a nerd, I was like, we need to get there early to avoid all the queues. Or at least get a decent space in the queue. But yeah, no, we didn't. No queues anymore. No queues at all. Only if you get there early. So right. What I've heard
before 9?
No, not before 9. Before 10. That's when we went. We got to the plaza about 10:30.
Oh, did we?
Just walk straight through. If you get
10, did we?
Yeah, 9:30. Sorry.
That's what I mean. If you get there before 9, is there a queue?
Before 10.
So okay.
We got there
when
9:30.
everybody gets there.
Everyone starts
the
to
same
get there
time.
at 10.
Right.
So you want to aim to be in the plaza before 10.
So basically, if you want to avoid the queue, go a bit early.
Yeah, because after 10, the queue really starts to build up all the way down to the monorail path.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you have to kind of get there early, but that's every day at a theme park.
Yeah.
If you want to avoid the queues at the entrance, you always get there early.
Yeah. But this way is nice because we used to get there early and then still have to queue, but we were near the front.
Yeah,
but this time we don't have to queue.
We'd have to wait in the plaza for a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is boring.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you said now, we just walked over there straight away, and we're ready to go. But yeah, no, the temperature check was something that was at Towers, but
not at Paultons.
But not at Paultons. So Paultons was very different in terms of, at the entrance plaza, there was dots on the floor that spaced out the different kind of queues where you had your ticket scanned. You'd wait at the dots and then, gradually move forwards. And then some person would scan your ticket. Yeah, but there was no temperature check at all.
No, which I expected there to be one.
And there wasn't much in the way of explanation.
No, it was just go in. Yeah.
I know the guide for us did say, do you need explaining? Do you want to know how the virtual queue works?
Oh yeah.
And I said no because I thought,
But that's not really a safety precaution, is it?
No.
In the way of like, oh, please make sure you wash your hands frequently or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I say, they did have the wash stations, so that was something. But then I don't know. It's just very like, even things like it's different for us because we live in Wales, so I feel like my mental state is always like 2 weeks behind everyone else because we had our lockdown restrictions eased slower. But they had things like at Paultons, they had the kids area with the water, like the water play area. All the kids were running around and like playing.
That shouldn't have been open, really,
like,
should it?
Is that meant to be open? Because probably it is allowed to be now, but I feel like it shouldn't be morally.
There was no...
Because all the families were just like, the kids were like basically naked, like running everywhere, like all in and out of the water, just absolutely no cares in the world. That was a bit off to me. There were certain things at Paultons where I was like, like especially when we went into Peppa Pig World, it was rammed. There was like staff members with signs saying, please keep your distance, and no one was. Like all the families just weren't.
Because so many pushchairs and like just...
And it's quite tight in there.
Kids don't adhere to the rules at all, don't they?
But it's not even the kids, it was the parents.
As
like
well, yeah.
the parents were all stood in groups and everything. So I don't know, there was some moments, but then they did have like virtual queues as well, which is good. Yeah,
so the virtual queues was an interesting one. I was told that they've been rotating the rides on the virtual queues to figure out what rides get the most value out of it.
Okay.
Which is why previously, Velociraptor, one of the main coasters, wasn't on there, but the day we went, it was on there. And yeah, so the virtual queue, it's just an app basically on the Paultons Park app. You can choose how many people you want to book a slot for. It tells you how long you'll be virtually queuing for. You join the queue and then it ticks down. But what we found was any single ride that was on there had big queues very quickly.
Yeah.
Because people started to virtually queue, and then obviously, like we did, you'd go off and ride something else while you're virtually queuing. It
was a fine system, but I think a lot of people were booking it and then not using it. Because every time we went to a queue, there was like no one else basically going in.
Yeah, this is it, right? There was no kind of buffer for the queue. So, as you said, we'd walk in and we'd be straight on the ride.
Yeah.
So, trains or cars or whatever were going empty. Yeah. Or going at less than full capacity.
Much less.
Exactly. So then you're just reducing how fast the queues go.
Yeah.
You really need to build in a buffer so that there's a constant flow of guests.
But then do you think they're doing that to limit the amount of people on the ride so they're not, or to limit the queues so that social distancing is kept?
Well, no, because they have other queues that
just queues.
Yeah, I guess. So you can't really use that argument. I just think they're not really used to how it works yet, and they need a bit of fine tuning. Because we even we had like 1 minute left apparently on our wait time, and we watched the entrance, and as soon as someone scanned in, it was our turn to go.
Yeah, so they're waiting.
So from what it seems, it's a proper like queue, orderly queue. You have to wait for the person ahead of you, but if they don't turn up for a while,
Maybe there's like a 5-minute
yeah,
thing of like...
there probably is. There probably is a timer.
It's probably longer than 5 minutes though, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Like if you've missed your slot by 5 minutes, that's quite a short amount of time. I feel like
there's
it'd
probably
be 15,
a longer one, yeah. But I imagine what the app does is, as soon as your slot becomes available, if you don't go in it within a few minutes, it starts to bump other people up.
Or to see if they go in.
To see if they go in, yeah. But what it should do is it should be getting multiple people to go in at the same time.
Yeah.
So that there's always a steady flow of people going towards the entrance. Yeah, because, it's a good system and it could work, but it definitely needs some fine-tuning. For sure.
But I think virtual queuing if we're talking about what else can they do to make parks safer, I think virtual queues should be in force for like major rides where the queues are like big.
It's difficult though, because the major rides are the rides that are best suited to big queues, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that?
As in, let's take Wicker Man. Wicker Man has a huge, stupidly long queue. As in, like, the queue capacity, there you go, is big, right? It's a very long queue, as in, it takes ages to walk through all of it.
Yeah.
So the bigger rides are set up for socially distanced queuing. The smaller rides are the ones that aren't.
Yeah, but I think all rides then should have it, because people can't socially distance in a queue. People aren't standing on their dot, are they? Which is, like, if you were to look at kind of like areas of improvement that they haven't solved yet, do you know what I mean? That's the biggest one of, like, when you're in a queue, you have to rely on everybody standing on their dot, which they're not. B, if someone wants to leave a queue, they walk past like loads of people to get out really close to them. So there's two things there where it's like you can't socially distance or people aren't. So if you had a virtual queue, then you wouldn't have any issues of like people coming into contact with each other. Do you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at the same time, I think for some parks, a virtual queue just really wouldn't work very well. I mean, we already saw how busy Peppa Pig was, and a lot of the Peppa Pig rides were virtual queues, so perhaps that's why it felt so busy.
Because they're all just waiting outside.
Exactly. They're not in the physical queue lines.
Mm-hmm.
Just think of all the amount of people who can be held in the Wicker Man queue or the Smiler queue. You know, Alton Towers is not a good example because it's a very big park and they can accommodate large amounts of people in the paths. But take a smaller park, like Paultons or Thorpe Park.
Yeah, people need to spread out in the paths and the queues.
Yeah, so if you took them all out of the rides, then they'd just be standing around. So there's a balance, isn't there? There's a fine balance between it.
You know what we need is we need some barriers in the queue lines so that the barriers automatically open when you're allowed to move forward, and then it shuts again behind you. And no one's allowed to leave the queue, and they have to stand on their dot.
There you go.
This is the problem though, like, this is why I was so anxious about going to a park, because I knew that people weren't going to follow the rules and they were going to kind of like ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah, that's just people though. That's what people do.
But it's annoying because, like, if everybody stuck to the rules, it would be so safe to go there. And everybody would be able to, like, go there and be like, oh, it's safe, it's okay, like, we can enjoy this. Mm-hmm. But because people are not respecting everything, it makes me not want to go back to a park, because I'm like, but I know what's going to happen is we're going to be in a situation where we can't socially distance from other people because they're just doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like certain times as well where, because obviously if you're on a path and someone's coming towards you and they don't move out the way, obviously I can just like literally move my body out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was times where it was like really hard for me to move away from people who weren't socially distancing. So like if we got off a ride, everybody rushes to the exit at the same time.
People weren't very aware, were they?
No, and it was really hard. Even if I like waited back, there was still so many people around me because it was so tight.
Mm.
It's things like that where I was like, oh, this is just like stressful.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
I don't know.
Theme parks aren't particularly built for this, are they?
They're really not at all.
No.
And also it's things like if everybody just wore a mask as well.
Yeah, if everyone wore a mask all the time, it'd be a lot safer for everyone.
Yeah. And even like a couple of times, when we got home, I looked at some of the photos I took of people on the rides, because obviously I just took some photos, and I was going to use one of Spinball where I was going to say like, oh, masks on rides, and put this photo, and then I realised the people in the photo that I took weren't wearing their masks, so they obviously put them on, left the station, going up the lift hill, take the mask off. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, stupid. It doesn't really make any difference to the ride, does it?
Just keep your mask on.
Yep.
I don't know. It's difficult. I guess the question is, did you feel safe?
Mostly.
Somewhat.
There you go. That's the answer. I mean, you asked this question to everyone, didn't you? Mm-hmm. On Twitter. You said, do you feel safe visiting theme parks with the measures currently in place, e.g. social distancing, reduced capacity and extra cleaning? And there were 4 options. Yes, completely safe. No, not safe at all. Somewhat safe, and then the classic I'm not sure, so that people can see what the results are. We already know what that is, but if you're listening now, have an idea of which one you think people might have chosen. Is it yes, no, or somewhat?
Yeah. I can't remember what the final result is either.
Oh, you can't?
No.
What you probably know what it is, what the chosen one was.
I don't know, because I can't remember.
What percentages do you think? So,
okay.
Yes.
I have to do maths now, hold on. I think 10% said I don't know.
Yeah, 10% said I don't know.
So we got 90% to work with now.
Yes.
Okay, so the least one would be no.
Yep.
So let's say 10% for no.
Okay.
And then what have I got left? 80.
Yes, or somewhat safe, and 80%.
I think 60 for yes and 40 for somewhat.
That doesn't add up. You have 80
Oh,
left.
yeah, sorry. Okay, wait. Basically, I want 60-40, but in 80.
Yeah.
So...
35-45.
Yeah. So I think yes was the highest.
So yes was second at 27%.
Okay, good.
No was 12%. Somewhat safe was 54%, and then 7 was I'm not sure.
Good.
So, yeah. 55% of everyone who voted, which really is more like 57% if you adjust, probably.
Yeah.
57.5.
So majority has said somewhat.
Majority said somewhat, yeah.
That's interesting. Interesting that less people said no than yes. Because I think I would either be a no or somewhat.
Yeah.
Even though I went to parks, I didn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you're voting yes, I think you don't really understand what's going on in the world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because how can you feel safe when we don't know where coronavirus is, and the measures, although they're good, aren't completely protecting us? Do you know what I mean? So I don't really see how you can vote yes.
Yeah.
But each their own. I don't know.
We had many comments in the replies to this. Andrew said, our Andrew, for the most part, I'd say so I imagine he voted somewhat.
Yeah.
Have noticed the parks are getting longer lines, and those kind of lines tend to have people removing masks and getting closer to each other. He didn't feel comfortable in those queues at all.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Steffel yeah. Said, at the Efteling I felt pretty safe, but at Wallaby Holland almost no one was keeping distance in the queues. At Toverland, only the people from abroad didn't follow the rules. Ooh. So yes and no.
Ooh.
There you go.
It's interesting, like, thinking about if people are travelling abroad right now. I don't know why they would be, but if they are, like, different rules in different countries, and, like, if obviously they've said that people abroad aren't respecting that country's rules kind of thing. Interesting. Lindsay says, I'm just not comfortable because there are people that are not following the rules, but that's mostly not the park's fault. The park has a right to have people say, hey, put your mask back on, but a person needs the initiative to maintain that too. I agree. It's sad in a way, because like the parks are trying so hard. It's very frustrating. It's like being in school when your teacher's like, please could you just stop talking, and there's like one guy not talking, and it's like, oh no, one guy is talking. It's very frustrating.
Six Flags America meme says, I've been to 2 parks since opening, And in both cases, I just didn't feel safe. And ultimately, it's hard to enjoy myself while I'm constantly on guard about it.
Yeah. I think I found that as well because I'm always on edge about what's going on around me anyway. That this takes it to another level of like, I was constantly panicking. But then I did have moments of like where you kind of forget that it's, do you know what I mean? Like at Paultons when we walked out to like the little mill house or whatever it was. The water mill.
Yeah.
What was that place called?
Yeah, the water mill.
There was like little pelicans there in a cage. And that was nice. There was like no one around. And I was like, oh, this is a really nice day out. And when we looked around the animals, there was no people there either. So that was nice. But then, yeah, you get to the crowded bits and it's kind of like a bit overwhelming.
Brian replied with a thread that he had made about this.
I saw that, yeah.
His answer was no, he doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And the main gist is, you know, I appreciate that parks have been trying their best and taking steps forwards, but he acknowledges the fact that not everyone is going to follow them. He says, you know, parks say don't take phones out on roller coasters, yet loads fly off all the time. But he doesn't judge people for going, because everyone is independent and makes their own decisions.
I don't judge people for going. I judge people for going and not sticking to the rules.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? If you go to a park, you're wearing your mask, you've got your hand sanitizer with you, you're trying to keep your distance, like, when you can, that's fine, because we've all got to get back out there. But if you're just going out and willy-nilly, like, walking everywhere, you're not going to wear a mask, whatever, it's just kind of like, well, what are you doing, though?
Yeah.
Brandy says, I've only been to Thorpe Park so far, but I was very impressed with all the measures in place and personally felt very safe. I think it definitely depends on how well the guests abide to the measures, as I've seen some people ignoring social distancing wherever I go. Yeah, I agree. I think basically everybody's saying the same kind of thing. It's like, I feel safe if everybody's doing what they're meant to be doing. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, of course.
What do you think then? When are we going to go back to another theme park?
It's a good question. I don't know. I am in the mindset of still trying to go to parks that we don't visit as much. Mm-hmm. Often they're the smaller parks anyway and will attract less people.
Yeah.
But then those are probably the parks that need the most support.
Yeah.
And, you know, like many people, we've had our trips cancelled to go to all these new parks. It'd be nice to still try and do something relatively new.
Yeah. But in the UK.
Exactly, but in the UK. So Oakwood theme park is probably one that we'll end up going to sooner rather than later. It's a relatively small park and it's close to us now, and Zoe hasn't been in it, and I went 4 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
It is.
There's other ones as well, like Water Valley.
Yeah, I'd like to go there, but the Ultimate isn't open.
Oh.
So I don't want to go.
Wow.
I know. So
Absolutely
I'm just not going.
fuming, mate.
I'm just not going, yeah. And
in protest.
Flamingo Land, there's no point going until they open their new coaster.
Yeah.
So those two are ruled out. Margate is closed completely, which is a part I'd like to get to at some point.
Yeah.
You got like Adventure Island.
Mm-hmm. Where's that? On Adventure Island. Is that an island?
No.
Oh. What's it called, Adventure Island then?
I think it's called Adventure Island. It's at Southend.
Which is Essex?
Yeah, so west, a bit up and a bit to the right of London.
Yeah.
So the other side of the country completely.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's difficult.
3.5 hours away.
3.5 hours, wow. But yeah, I think it's difficult because like even parks like Oakwood, they weren't busy before. But obviously now we're in lockdown. Nobody's abroad on holiday. Well, some people are, but do you know what I mean? There's going to be more demand for places like Oakwood anyway, especially in Wales where, you know, people can't really travel out of Wales.
Yeah.
It's such a long way to another theme park. So, I don't know, it's difficult to know how busy it's actually going to be.
And there's not many other theme parks we'd actually like to get to outside of those. You know, I'd like to go back to Thorpe Park at some point, but not in a huge rush to go there. And then we've got the whole question surrounding whether Halloween goes ahead.
Yeah.
And whether
some
the scare
things
mazes
have started to close, haven't they already? I saw somewhere announced that they're not doing scare mazes.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with parks, whether they have scare zones.
Yeah.
Or
socially distanced scaring.
Yeah, don't know. Yeah.
Well.
It'll be interesting. I've got no idea, and I think that'll play a big part of what happens in terms of what parks we go to.
Yeah.
Because if the scare maze is still a thing, don't know. I do like going to the scare events, and then there's meant to be the Merlin parks have got Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see what the hell that's about.
Yeah.
So, but that's in like September.
September's not far away now, though.
No, I know.
It's mad.
Yeah, so there's no immediate rush to go to any parks. We'll just play it by ear, really, and see what happens.
Yeah.